to another exciting episode of ZoeTV. Man, does it get better than a one segment, one guest where we can just devote time to one?
No,
and
it doesn't
one
get any better.
Hugely impactful, important person.
I know.
Our
talking about your mom again, are you?
My mom is backstage. Jeannie Hiller, everybody. No, it's John Winslow.
Yes.
Oh, John, thanks for coming on, man. We wanted to spend time with you. We wanted to talk about everything you've accomplished here at Glencroft, and
you could have done this earlier. You didn't have to wait till today.
No, yeah, that's true. But our residents used to love watching your show with Rich, and you had that awesome little CEO corner, and you had good guy, and they were like, "We miss seeing John on TV." So
I miss doing TV. So thanks for asking me over. This set looks a little different than the set that they gave me. Much more comfortable, okay?
So the colors are very good.
So it tells me something too, all right?
But you have the Tonight Show vibe.
Yeah, I was going to say, you have the skyline.
You always change. One day you're in China, and then you're back. So we've got so many new residents have been exposed to Zoe Life that have moved in because of the program. Occupancy is up throughout. When you came, how many years ago? That wasn't always the case.
7.5 years ago. And I when I tell the story, I just shared it again the other day. In fact, an hour ago, in another conversation, General Patton could have driven his Fifth Army through Glencroft and not hit anybody back when I got here in February of 2014, because we were down about 50% occupancy in the major part of our organization, and that was pretty much of a challenge to do that. It was exciting times in the sense that I had a lot to work with, right? Lots of apartments I could fill, but there was a lot of stuff that wasn't done, capital expenditures and fixing the place up. Money hadn't been spent on that. So it was a challenge to that. But it was exciting because we got to do some things. And then as we got successful in that, which was pretty quick in terms of making a turnaround, then we got, of course, I started looking to the future. And and that last 3 years of that 7.5 years, about halfway through, has made a lot of difference in my life, in the sense that I got to do what I've wanted to do in the for-profit world. Because I came from the Brookdale environment, where everything is a for-profit organization tied to Wall Street, where you're only as good as the last 90 days when you're giving your K1s. One job I reported out to Wall Street, and they don't care about the future. They just care what you do for me the last 90 days, right? And so we were able to do this here, and by connecting with you and being able to start on this trip with Zoe Life has probably changed. What it did was that it added 3 more years to my being. Otherwise, I may have left a long time ago, because you can only do so much in resurrecting a community, filling apartments, which we were at the time we started Zoe Life. So what are you going to do? And I'm not a guy to accept the status quo. I think that if you just stay where you're at, you're actually going backwards, as you well know, as I told you. And so we came up with a plan to try to provide an environment where people could actually thrive. Because I used to get myself, and I still do occasionally, get myself in a lot of trouble in the circuit, so to speak. I tell people I'm tired of us institutionalizing our residents.
Yes,
okay?
thank you.
And that was a real challenge for me. Now, it's the best model that we have, okay? And a lot of people do some good things here, and other people do some good things over there, but it's not a comprehensive lifestyle. And so the conversations that we had, that it's, sometimes you can't even share it with people, because we spent hours talking about how this should look. And I think through the grace of God, getting the vision to come to do this, I think we were able to pull it off. And we pulled it off in time to a large extent, because even though I wish we would have had another year before the pandemic, not that I want the pandemic to come at all.
Sure.
Right.
But the independent residents had that first good year and a half. We were just starting in our licensed areas when the pandemic hit, and that kind of did a number on us. But now we're back in the saddle and doing this. So it's exciting, because what we're doing is, in this technological world that we're in, Steve, and you and I have these conversations all the time, is that everybody wants to use technology to make our lifestyle better. And I get that piece, because we got smartwatches here where fall, the fall detection, etc. But we didn't care about the fall detection as much as we wanted to help people so they wouldn't need to fall. There was not a propensity to fall. And that's what prompted this thing to move out to a better lifestyle. So it's been fun. It's been a great ride. The future is looking really bright. In fact, I was accused of, what do we do with ZoeLife? Okay, in the future, so I've kind of, what do we do? But I think the question is taking ZoeLife out to a broader spectrum of our retirement population and trying to do something there to share what I believe is the single most important thing that we can do for our seniors on a go-forward basis, in that if we can make them better, feel better, look better, all those various things by eating, by exercise, by spiritual involvement, continuing to learn, you name it, from all the pillars that we have. And my mother gave up volunteering at 85, okay? She passed at 96. I wish I could have convinced her that the best years for doing something, having something of worth, would have been after 85, just because she got a hip replacement. She thought her life was over. But you need to have a purpose in life, Steve. The purpose doesn't stop when you retire, okay? You have to do some things. God put us on this planet for us to make a difference in the lives of people, regardless of what age you're at. Now, I understand when you got health complications, there's some things you can't do as much as you want to, but everybody can do something. And I think what ZoeLife offers is that you have somewhere there that you can do something to make a difference. Mm-hmm. You might not be able to walk anymore out of your scooter because you've lost a limb, okay? But that doesn't mean you can't be an encouragement to people by going through some of our seminars at Glencroft University, and you talk about where we have people talk about depression and all those kinds of things that people are reluctant to talk about.
Yeah.
You can be an encourager. One of the best things I think that people can be when they're retired is be an encourager to their neighbors. Mm-hmm. And you can get that through ZoeLife and really make the difference in someone's life. So it's been fun. It still is fun. We're having a good time. We're still talking about things that we can do and new ideas, the whole 9 yards.
It's an exciting time. It's been an adventure, I'm sure, for you, spending so much time on this campus and probably never envisioning a pandemic arriving towards the end over here. And
hope not.
Going back to the 2020 beginning of what was it like sitting in the master seat, orchestrating everything that we did? How was that experience?
In 2020? Mm-hmm. Just before the pandemic?
Right before it, and then when it hit. How was it like? Because it's easy to Monday morning quarterback a scenario, but like you had to make some tough calls. And how was that experience?
Different.
Yes.
We've experienced a lot of things in our lifetime. We all do when we're around. I've experienced a lot of downsides in my life since in the 40 years that I've been doing senior housing. Got involved in about 30ish, maybe 29. But it came so suddenly, and a lot of the issues that I had before were like in real estate. Housing markets collapsed for a while, and so people were afraid they couldn't do anything, and then they went up, despite peaks and valleys. The pandemic was such a quick surprise. We were off to our best year since I'd been here when the pandemic started in the first quarter of 2021. We were operating on all 11 cylinders on our 8-cylinder car. And that's why we didn't really start struggling financially till after the second quarter, only because when we started having some issues with the pandemic, because we were doing so well that first quarter. We really were. It was amazing. So we certainly weren't on autopilot, okay? But I think we did a couple of things that I think still stand us to good stead in maneuvering through it. I was just sharing in a meeting before I came in here, is that one of the things we did was we didn't shut down. I asked the senior staff we were leaders. We needed to be here despite what was happening. We had some people certainly worked from home a day or so a week. Some worked a little longer if they weren't necessary. But if you're part of the senior staff here in terms of those responsibilities, we were here.
Yes.
And so we saw a lot. But what we also saw is we saw God's grace in that not a one of us got sick from the from that senior staff that worked. So that was great. But we're able to see a lot of things a lot more clearly. And I think that actually goes to helping us with Glencroft and with ZoeLife specifically in the future, is that we learned that we have to start doing things differently. And the world was definitely looking different, and it's looking different now. But the impetus and the importance of what we do has come even clearer and more important, because we just don't know when something like this springs on us and we have to respond. So I don't believe our action here with what we've been doing for planning with ZoeLife and those various things, we didn't react, but we did respond. Mm-hmm. It was a year of responding.
Right.
We didn't overreact, even in some deep, deep valleys that we had with some of the challenges that we did have in that 6-week period of May and early June. I mean, but it's kind of like, hello, but it was kind of fast also, okay, in the sense that it happened very quickly. I'm going to use this analogy only in the sense that people get a chuckle out of. I heard in a sermon in church last week that our lives, as evidenced almost not just in general of aging, but with the pandemic, is like a roll of toilet paper. So let me draw that graphic for you.
Okay.
When you're starting off, you're unrolling it very slowly. The closer you get to the end, the faster it goes.
Oh, I like that. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
And I think last year is one of those kind of years. It was just unraveling on us every time we turned on. It was just unraveling. Mm. But we responded really well, enough to the fact that some of the things that we did, and us opening up some of the, and we moved those levers a little bit, opened up a little bit of ZoeLife and moved them down so people could respond. I think we responded really well. And I think that led us to the point that when we opened up, period, that it made a huge difference in terms of people responding, because people wanted to have some of those that didn't drink the Kool-Aid before, okay, for ZoeLife, as you shared with me, they wanted to have a gallon of that Kool-Aid to start with. So ZoeLife was a challenge, but I think it showed us that we were on the right track. The world now is changing in senior housing, that wellness is a big deal in our industry, as you well know. What can we do to make people better, feel better, look better, act better, et cetera, and so forth? Well, that's the Kool-Aid that we have and that we've given people, and people really want some of that, because they're finding out that, and some people are doing some great jobs at that, limited, except the difference that we're doing is everybody is still looking at it in their community to make money. You and I, in our discussions and conversations, and got the support from our board of directors, was that we're not charging for ZoeLife. Mm-hmm. Okay? We don't have the money to pay for you and for Gerald and for Michelle and all that. So we didn't have the money, but we couldn't afford not to do it, because I think doing the right thing and keeping our people healthy and keeping them active and keeping them want to be better, as opposed to hiding out in a casita or something, was hugely important. And I think one thing our industry hasn't learned yet entirely is this is something that just needs to become part of the culture of each organization, so people can have it. It's like providing food service. When we provide meals, they come, whether you take them or not, they're available. You've got to eat them because you're paying for them. And I think ZoeLife is that way. If it's in the rent, okay, and you either participate or you don't, but we're not charging for it. And if people ask, how can we afford to do that? The reason we can afford to do that way is, even though we're a fairly low rent community compared to Scottsdale, for example, is that we have almost 900 residents. So even if you're paying me a limited amount of dollars compared to if we were in Scottsdale, I think we did a number the other day, if we would be in Scottsdale for what we're doing, we would probably have a $100 million revenue company, simply because what they're charging over there compared to over here in Glendale, where our budget is $32 million a year. But because when we're full and we have people paying what they level that they do pay, we can afford to provide ZoeLife in terms of how we're doing it. And that's important for people to know. So don't think that we're getting any more money. When people ask me what I'm doing these days, I work for the government. They kind of look at me like, what does he mean? Well, in our licensed units, which is about 65% of our revenue, and our assisted living in Providence Place, 98% government pay. So, I work for the government. They're the one that write my check every month, okay? Not the independent residents that live in casitas or crossings. That's where and that comes with rules and with regulations and things that make our life a little tougher. So it certainly is a complicated environment that we're in, but it's fun to pull the levers in that too, right?
You hold on. Go ahead in a sec. The idea that you have so many hats going on at one time and have your pulse on so many big decisions that we went through in 2020. I mean, I'm always in awe because people don't understand how much you're involved in every big project on this campus, that your thumbprint is on all of it. And I think that people lose sight of that. The decisions are being made, but they don't understand the behind the scenes. And we have guests on that work here. We always try to spotlight so many that are behind the scenes because the ship couldn't work without those bodies acting in your leadership throughout the last 7 years. I mean, it's unbelievable.
Well, and thank you for that, Steve. I think because my management style is one that I'm not a guy that sits around having coffee all day long. Okay, I'm behind the scenes. We're pulling a lot of levers all the time, simply because taking care of 900 residents and 500 employees is tough as nails to do. So we're moving these needles all the time to try to make everybody happy, which is probably my first mistake, or maybe the only mistake, right? Leading to other mistakes, trying to make everybody happy. But you're right. We do look at a intertwining of possibilities in so many different areas that it does become a time for a headache, as you well know sometimes, because you can't do ZoeLife for assisted living, for example, the same way that you do it in the performance center, right? And that does present, and then you take that over to the care center, where the federal government now is involved, and we all know about the federal government today, right? 10 soldiers killed in Afghanistan today. I mean, it's a problem, and keeping those balls in the air and moving the levers is a challenge. But that's why we're here, to take care of residents and try to do the best that we can, understanding that some don't understand, will never understand. But I think we've proven that we've seen some great results, and I'm really thankful for that.
Me too. I would like to ask a question we ask a lot of times on the radio. We know that COVID has been awful, and we have talked about it, and we've seen firsthand the devastation from COVID in a lot of places. But I know one of the silver linings I've seen on our campus, but what have you seen? A silver lining that has come out of the bad of this pandemic?
Well, you're probably going to be surprised at my answer, okay, because we've never talked about it this way. I know we've asked questions on successful aging. What I've seen the good coming out of COVID is that if we keep our eyes focused in the right place, God is still in control.
Oh, it's an awesome answer.
Great.
Exactly. And I think it's what led you, you're being humble here, to start the food pantry.
Yes.
That was an immediate thing that we did because you came to work one day and said you couldn't get toilet paper at Costco or wherever you and your wife were. And you said, we can get toilet paper. We will get toilet paper, and we will help our residents.
Yeah, that was kind of...
That was April.
Yeah, that was April. That was kind of an interesting situation in the sense that it was one of these things, again, just like with ZoeLife, we didn't have the money to do it, but we knew it was the right thing to do, Steve. And I think with the food pantry, that was also the right thing to do. When I said God's in control, that's a great example of doing the right thing, and you know that, hey, man, God provides. We don't have the money, but we have to do it. We'll find the money. Somehow we're going to do something. And the very first day of the food pantry, we weren't charging. A lady left us a $20,000 check. And what we found out by doing the right thing that way, people that wouldn't don't donate money to the foundation donated to the food pantry. That's well over $125,000. $165,000. And so I think when you do the right thing, it does come back in spades to you. And so I learned that if you do the right things, the silver lining is, and you keep your eyes focused on the right place, it will come back in spades, and it has.
It has. And it's not like we've made money on it, but we've had money to spend. I mean, we've spent nearly that much. So it's been an amazing thing to be a part of and watch. And the residents are
they still coming?
Oh, yes. And they're just as grateful now because here we are again, right? They're afraid to go out. There are so many people on our campus that aren't capable of going out because they can't get transportation and they're kind of stuck in their home. And this is a way to get out in a safe environment and go home with food.
It can't be better than that, right? Rather than driving, you drive your scooter or you take your walker.
And we get to
come back
see
down with
each
a
other.
bag of groceries.
Yes. And if you haven't been to the food pantry, we have 18 to 20 different fresh fruits and vegetables every single time.
I think the only thing in the future that I'm hoping that we'll see here is because I think that we're back in another bubble, surge, so to speak. I think I'm in a bubble. I don't know. Don't ask me why I say that. But I think I'd like to see the food pantry expand a little bit more, so that we're a little bit more responsive and not quite so reactive. Because I think doing the right thing and providing some more options, because we still have what a lot of people don't know is when I got here, we changed from life leasing to a rental model. But we do still have some individuals in our life lease communities of the 50 or so that we have left that don't have money.
Mm-hmm.
They don't have money for groceries. And even though they may be paying $700 a month, that's not enough in terms of providing a lifestyle that is less than just kind of barely making it. And so I think that the next level that we need to go with the pantry is going forward is trying to provide some additional options for them for food, whether I don't know how that needs to look, but something that they can take that they can cook. One of the very first stories I heard early on my tenure here, that one of the things about the market is that that's where some residents get their food from, the milk and the bread they get at the market.
Right.
I mean, I'm appalled. So when we did the food pantry, that was in the back of my mind. I got to provide this kind of thing in a different way so that they can eat. So that was another silver lining there. It allowed me to say, hey, what can I do in terms of providing for those residents that you wouldn't hear from ever? But we're doing the work that's part of our mission at Glencroft, taking care of people in Christ's love.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, we're almost out of time. I want you to tell
How do you
everybody.
know?
I know, because I'm good like that. I got intuition. I know we're close. But I think we could keep going on and on and on, but I won't make us. I think it's important because I say it a lot of what is on your whiteboard in your office about leading, about being an example, about how you as a leader of this campus and us as staff follow the North Star, which is Christ, but how you put that on your board. And I see it every time we're in there. You have those words you live by about leading by example. And talk through real quick just your strategy of why you're wired the way you are.
Well, that's a real good question, and I'm wired, and it's a very simple answer to that. Only in the sense, but part of my personality that just to make things happen. But what people don't understand is why I can be successful at a place like Glencroft. I've never have shared this with anybody on this campus ever before, and so it'll be
Just
on tape.
us.
Wow. And everybody.
I got involved in this business as a young kid. I thought I saw the future when my dad and I bought a retirement mobile home park over in East Mesa. And my attorney at the time built the very first retirement apartments in Mesa. And I looked at what happened and I said, this is the future. So, but being very young in my 20s at the time, I had money but no brains and no experience in this part of the business. So I convinced my lawyer at the time to become partners with me, and we built the second retirement community in Dallas, Texas, in the suburb of Garland. And the economy collapsed at the time. They turned the lights out in Texas at that time. And so we were finishing the building up, and nobody was wanting to move. It's kind of like when we had the Great Recession here in 2010. And the money that my father and I had made in real estate prior to that, we spent it all to support this building that was struggling because of the real estate recession in Dallas, Texas. But that taught me the valuable lessons that I still apply to this day, and I would apply in anything that we do from an ownership perspective. When I have to write my very first check I wrote, my dad and I, for our part of the partnership, was a $100,000 check for 1 month to survive. So I learned really quick, what does it take to survive when things don't go well in this business? So when I came to Glencroft, I knew exactly what needed to be done, because I spent over $1 million to save, or $2 million to save my business at the time, but ultimately became successful. What kind of things do you need to do intuitively because of an ownership perspective? It's tough to write a dead-gum check for $100,000, knowing it's going into a black hole. And so those are the principles that I learned from that when I can walk into a community like Glencroft, and I know what it takes to fix it. Because I spent the money. I'm not a manager. Too many people in our business are managers. God bless them. They try to do a good job. But I know, because from an ownership perspective, I wrote the check.
Skin in the game. Absolutely.
Skin in the game personally. And in the world of large corporations like Brookdale's running $700, $800, $900, they got $700, $900 managers. Bless their hearts, they try to do the best job, but they don't know what it takes because it's not theirs. And it's until you go through that. So that's been now 40 years. Okay, that's still the big lesson, and that's why I do what I do and how I do it. And that's the lesson, the life lesson that you learn from.
I think that says a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, you lead by example, and you do own it.
So I do own it. I mean, so when people say, well, why are you doing it? It just needs to be done.
Yeah.
Sometimes I can't explain why I'm doing it. It's just that I know if I don't do it, we're toast.
Right. I like that you said, I don't know how we can afford it, but I know we can't not to afford it.
And
so
that's a big thing.
That's something I take away.
Awesome.
Yes, very few people do that, but that's me. That's what we had for 7.5 years, and there you go.
Glencroft is so fortunate to have had you.
Yes,
I mean,
and
your
us.
thumbprint is all over this place, and we are so grateful for your leadership, man.
Well, thank you, guys. I wish you all the very best also.
Appreciate it.
But you could have invited me earlier.
I know.
I'm
not going to say we did. We tried a few times.
You did?
We did. You got a very good secretary that blocks us away. He's busy.
All right,
He's
all right.
busy. We appreciate you, man.
My pleasure. Thank you.